This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. My guest today, we are going to have, I'm just going to let you know, we're going to have a fascinating conversation. The preface of her new book literally begins with "Entrepreneurs will change your life." That's literally the title of the preface. And she is an entrepreneur. Her family, they're an immigrant refugee family. Currently, she lives in Paris right now with her family, her son and her husband. Adjunct professor and an entrepreneurship expert at the University of Oxford. She's contributed to HBR, Harvard Business Review, as well as to Fast Company. And what I'm going to be highlighting here is a couple of things. One is a comment from my friend Mel Robbins, whom she had on as a guest not too long ago about her book, "The Most Profound, Captivating, and Unparalleled Business Advice You Will Find." That's what Mel has to say about this book, and it says a lot about who my guest actually is. Neri Karra Sillaman is who I'm bringing onto the stage right now. And like I mentioned, she is an adjunct professor and entrepreneurship expert at the University of Oxford. But she's really focused on resilience, longevity in the business place. The title of her book is 8 Principles of Business Longevity from Immigrant Entrepreneurs. And that's an area that I really would like us to explore and have some fun with is, what does it mean to be, number one, a refugee, number two, an immigrant, and number three, an entrepreneur? So there's kind of a sequence here that comes into play here. And she has, very simply, in my perspective here, broken the code, on how that actually works. Her research data, everything that she's put together actually points to what Mel is actually highlighting here, which is that this is one of the best business books you're going to find probably this decade. So, Neri, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Blaine. What an introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
It is absolutely my pleasure here. I typically will start the podcast with a question for my guests, which is, when you hear the term "the soul of business," what does that bring up for you? What does that kind of evoke? And given the uniqueness of your background, I think that question is really going to be an interesting one to have answered right now. So what does that bring up for you?
Well, the soul of business is the intention that you started that business with, because that's what it brings up for me. And it encompasses everything from your values and everyone that the business has impacted. And I talk a lot about intention because why you start something is going to determine how that business progresses, and even the small decisions that you make day to day. Whether that's, in our case, it was just going to suppliers with what materials we are going to use. And with the people I interviewed, some of them had to forego expansion. For example, Dominic Ansel, he started his bakery in New York, and he's the inventor of cronut. It became so successful that he was approached by these mega corporations to mass produce the cronut, and in the end he basically decided to say no, even though that's probably going to make him a lot more wealthy than he is now and allow him to retire easily at a very young age, potentially. So I think the soul of the business is why the intention, why you started something, and how you do anything in business.
I love that. And starting with that intention, there's a story that you can tell about your starting your family business, Neri Karra. Can Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you were a refugee out of from
Bulgaria.
Turkey, Bulgaria,
Bulgaria,
right?
yes.
Yeah, Bulgaria, and I am fascinated by the origin stories that
Sure.
entrepreneurs actually can bring to the table here, because there's so much in there about resilience, about uh, intention, about all of these things that you highlight in your book. Where did I mean, rather than just kind of prefacing the question, I'll just simply put the question in place here. Tell us the story of Neri Karra.
Sure, I became a refugee at the age of 11 with my 9-year-old brother and my parents in 1989 with only 2 suitcases. And that was as we were born in Bulgaria to Turkish ethnic minority. My family for centuries have been born in Bulgaria. And unfortunately, the communist government, Todor Zhivkov at the time, carried out an ethnic assimilation campaign against people of my ethnicity. And then we had forced immigration that happened. So that is an important one, because when I stood at the border as an 11-year-old refugee, I had a very clear realization that if one day I want to have a better life, I have to get a good education, and that the only way out of this confusion and chaos will be education. Education is the greatest equalizer.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it was a very clear vision. I mean, this also relates to entrepreneurship, because later on, once again, we had a very clear vision with how we wanted that business to be and what we wanted our life to look like. Same thing with my decision to get a good education. I had a very clear vision at the age of 11. And of course, I had many detours. At the time, it wasn't a very straight path, because we first started life in a refugee camp, and then from there I started school in one of the very rundown areas of Istanbul. It's called Esenler, and there wasn't even proper flooring in that school. We didn't even have teachers who, for example, we were supposed to have a math class, but we didn't have a math teacher. So the phys ed teacher will come in and say, everyone sing a song now, like just trying to fill in the time. And I'm not exaggerating. Many people who went to school in Esenler, in that, or even the other neighborhoods, will tell you about this fact. So I was very determined that, this education, that this decision to get a good education was my North Star. And I held on to that vision. And very similar to entrepreneurship, because you have a vision for your business, but you may have detours, you may have challenges, but you still keep going. And the end, like how you get there, may look different. Yeah. But you have to keep going. And what you achieve, at the time I was thinking, in some ways you could say small, because I thought I want to get into a Turkish university. That was my aim. Nobody in my family, by the way, has ever been to university. No one speaks English either, to this day. So once I actually failed to get into the Turkish university, the results came in. And however, this is an important point, because I could have said, okay, this is it, but I kept on going. And in the end, that leads me to receive financial aid to go study at University of Miami. And I experienced second immigration, much more discombobulating than the first one, much harder. And then it was at university, and I should open a parenthesis here, how we start our business, because my father at the time, my parents worked any jobs they could find. And they started selling leather products of a Turkish brand to former Soviet countries Russia, Romania, different, Georgia, all the former Stan countries, and
Yeah.
yes, making commission out of the products that they were selling. And however, my brother and I were very much involved in the business, even though my parents were selling those products. So this is where my academic hat comes in, because I often think about this. I don't know if I can easily call myself an entrepreneur, because I think I'm much more of an academic, even how we were building our business. So I convinced my parents to put up a sign outside that said, please come in for a homeland cup of coffee in the store in Turkey, to signal to people from the former communist countries that we also are from your country. So please come in. And this is important because we built, and I talk about it in the book, Principle 2, about homophilic ties and how you can use your shared history in order to create bonds, in order to create and strengthen your business.
Yeah.
So,
Please continue. I love this.
Great. And then around the same age, I was working as a translator because I spoke English, Turkish, and Italian, taking the Turkish producers with my parents there as well, translating. But that is a very important point here, because I was able to understand and see who the best producers of leather are in the world. And these are exhibitors in a giant trade fair called Linea Pelle. Those who are in fashion, in manufacturing, will know this. So I will take them to the Linea Pelle trade fair, translate, but we will even visit Filofax in London. We will visit the factories of Italian producers. And it was in those factories that I saw many of the producers have leather that they discard. That leather is either a little bit lower quality, or it's out of season, or something went wrong with the coloring process. So when 2 years later, for 2 years I worked as a translator back and forth, Italy, Turkey. Age 18, I go to University of Miami. I graduated in 2.5 years, by the way. But yes, during my education, during my studies, I wrote a business plan. And the business plan was for us to create our brand Neri Karra. The idea was to go to the suppliers, buy the leather that they are discarding, and create our first production. And it was a simple idea, and sell it to the existing distributors that my father has already established. So instead of making commission, why don't we create our own brand? So in 2000, that's what we did. And it started very small. It started with a very small collection of mobile phone covers and wallets and keychains. It didn't take that much to produce, but of course, we have to be self-sufficient. We didn't have investors. We didn't have this large capital. All we had was the contacts. And Blaine, few days ago, the Italian manufacturer, and I always talk about this in podcasts, how we started the business, how the business was formed, and I will talk about the Italian producers. And today, majority of them are owned by Chanel, by Kering, by LVMH. These are incredibly well-known Italian suppliers. Few days ago on LinkedIn, the president and owner of Gruppo Mastrotto, to my surprise, wrote a post about my book and saying all that I'm telling you, how we met when I was 16, how reading my book brought her back to her own family story. And I also, by the way, didn't necessarily know about her background or where her parents come from. But You see, when we were building the business, when we were having this, it's this unexplainable bond that you feel that, they didn't have to give us these leather products. We were
Right.
not, exactly, we were not a well-known brand at the time. I mean, we were a non-existent brand. And they do work with very large quantities. For us to go to them and say, by the way, will you either give it for free or sell it to us at highly discounted prices, the leather that you are not using? What do you say? And this today is called sustainability. People talk about it, as part of their marketing. The year was 1999 when we were doing this. The term sustainability haven't even entered our lexicon. And we didn't certainly start out thinking we are building a sustainable brand. That wasn't our aim per se, but that's what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a sustainable brand. I'm very interested in that. One of the myths. I mean, you've got a list, I think, of 8 myths
Yeah.
that you kind of explode the myths here, and one of them is that continual growth is a must for longevity, and you actually reframe that in saying sustainable growth,
Yes.
not continual growth. Can you unbundle, split that apart just a little bit? Because, for me, and I'm very interested here just in the story of resilience that you're building as we speak here. Sustainable success for me, and the way that I define it, is developing the capacity to continuously start over. So if we as an individual or as a company have developed that capacity to continuously start over, that can lend itself to some very interesting creative ways of approaching what we do and how we actually are as a business. So with that bit of a preamble, continual growth is a must for longevity is the myth, and you go,
Yes.
no, it's not.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
I think today, especially in fashion, in my own industry, everyone wants constant growth, fast growth, and unfortunately, for the last few years, that was celebrated, but
Yes.
also it is not sustainable. We cannot continue on this path. That's one. Second, I think today companies grow at this rate, and it's expected of them when they go to their annual review. They are expected to show this, but how fast? It's not about how fast you grow. How sustainable can you grow? And you said something about being able to start over. That's what exactly immigrants do. They always have to restart and start over. And I think I will argue, because it's the ultimate act of reinvention to be an immigrant. They have been able to embed that into the soul of their business as well.
That is so absolutely true. The idea, when you couple the ability to start over or the need to start over with a dream, and you had a dream, your family had a dream, and it may not have been completely clarified when you were first put into position as a refugee and then ultimately an immigrant. But in your business, and I'll just talk Neri Karra here. How frequently is the dream referenced?
I don't know if it's referenced every day per se. I don't know. However, the soul of the business is very much about other people. We never think of ourselves as these. I mean, my parents are here now and visiting us, and even yesterday my father was talking. He's very concerned and about his employees. The business is based in Turkey, And unfortunately, the economy in Turkey is not in great shape. And we pay very high salaries, although we are not obliged to, by the way. But when you see how the economy is doing, you feel obligated towards your people.
Yeah.
So I think this is and when we started our business, it wasn't about us or me having a name. People often ask me, oh, how do you feel when you see your name on a bag? It would never occur to me, actually, that this was like something that I should be bragging about. In fact, it's a huge responsibility, to be honest with you. It's not so much about look at what we created, but rather it's a great responsibility that you have towards your employees, your suppliers, your distributors, and your customers, everyone that comes into contact with what you've created and what you have, people who have become part of your business. So the dream is not so much that it's interesting, and we don't talk about what we created that much, but rather about the obligation and the responsibility and what we have to do day to day. It's really that, and it's interesting. We don't really, I guess, maybe it's cultural too. We don't always pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, look.
Look what we did.
Yes.
But what you're describing for me, I mean, this book over my shoulder here, for those of you that are watching the video, Compassionate Capitalism. That's in large part what you're speaking about. And for me, sustainable success, longevity in business is a function of being compassionate in the way you approach your business.
Yes.
And that compassion has nothing to do with look at me. It has everything to do with, do the people that we're touching have an opportunity to thrive as a consequence of our touch?
Absolutely.
Their association and affiliation with us.
Absolutely. Very, very important point. And I think, this was a realization for me after I've conducted my interviews as well. And it's the biggest aha moment in the book. I really, after speaking to everyone, after doing my analysis, come to the conclusion that entrepreneurs, when we look at entrepreneurship, we know there is a founder, there is this hero in the story who had an idea, who saw an unmet need, who revolutionized an industry. But the people I have spoken to, and I think that's where business impact and longevity comes in. They didn't think of themselves as the hero, as the egotistical person in the center of the story, but it's about other people. How am I benefiting others? What value is my business bringing to other people, to everyone that we come in contact with? And I think that's what creates impact. That's what ultimately creates longevity.
I could not have said that better.
And it's, I was recently at a talk, Blaine, at the American Club of Paris here. Afterwards, I was approached by a girl who wants to start a business. It's early days of her startup, and she said to me, I know it sounds, and I loved her question. She said, it sounds really great and very nice, but I also want to make profit. And and again, it's not that people don't want to make profit. It's not that we don't want to make profit. Without profit, your business doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And what I said was, if you think of what value am I bringing, what is unique value here, that's when, paradoxically, ironically, you also make profit. And I've seen it in the case of several entrepreneurs who I interviewed for the book as well. Well, I'll tell you, currently, Tope Awotona is one of the people that is in my book, and he initially had many failures. he set out with the idea that he wants to be an entrepreneur. And he wanted that because his father had been an entrepreneur. And it was, but the reason, the intention was coming from the place of, I want to be an entrepreneur, not from value.
Not from
Not
value.
from, yes. And when he shifted that, and when he really saw something that he himself is struggling with, something that he's not finding a solution to, Calendly happened.
And that makes all the difference. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
You know,
And
please go ahead.
And I think exactly, I agree. And that's what made the difference. Our intention matters.
Yeah, and there's a notion. Frederick Ritschald, who was a partner at Bain Consulting, coined a term, or actually a concept, the distinction between good profits and bad profits. And bad profits, I mean, are the hidden fees that you find that you kind of go, why did I have to pay that? I mean, bad profits could be, charges for luggage on an airline. I mean, things that just, they don't feel good. They don't taste good as a consumer. Good profits are the kind of profits that you get where you provide exemplary service, where you actually, I mean, I'm struck by, come in and get a home cup of coffee. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a value conversation that creates a sense of belonging, that if we
Exactly.
can actually begin to curate that, honestly, Nera, at the end of the day, all any organization is, as far as I have been able to tell, is a collection of people that are in relationship. And if the relationships are working well, you've got a pretty good shot at being successful. And the relationships are obviously the interpersonal, but also relationship with the brand, relationship with the vision, relationship with the work process, relationship, when I walk in the building, when I come into the kiosk, when I come into the store, I have a relationship with the environment. Does it feel good for me? Is it inviting? And that will generate good profit.
Absolutely. And speaking of relationship, I love what you just said. This is so accurate, so true. And one of the principles in my book is about community. How much immigrant entrepreneurs value community, and not community in terms of social media, because today I'm reading these articles like about community. Almost everything is referencing the brand or business's behavior on social media. And no, immigrant entrepreneurs often come from countries where the collective is valued,
Yes.
usually. And when they immigrate, during that process of immigration, they tend to lose many of the ties that hold them, that are very valuable to them.
Yeah.
So even if they will move to a country where they don't know a soul, they will try very quickly to rebuild those relationships. Whether suddenly Hamdi Ulukaya's story came to my mind when he's at a language school, he comes to US for a language school, and the teacher asks them to write about something they know. He knows about making feta cheese. And the teacher reads the essay and says, you know how to make feta cheese? And he says, yes. And she basically says, well, my husband and I, we just got a farm. We have no idea what to do with that farm. We have sheep, we have animals. Why don't you come and take care of it? And in exchange of you staying there. But there's a bond between them. And he very much focuses on the relationships. So it's no surprise that when he built Chobani, the heart of Chobani, the heart of his business is about community.
Absolutely.
So it is, everything exists in relationships. Everything is, even I talk about the fact that immigrants are very powerful at reframing rejection, failure, even the word no. They are only able to do that because of other people.
Yes.
It's the secret ingredient. you can reframe, you can withstand rejection, you can withstand failure in your life. And resilience, so misunderstood. Everyone thinks resilience comes from you, comes from the individual, but
No.
it's thanks to other people.
Yeah.
Without others in your life, you are not likely to be resilient. So this is very important. And I detail that in my book.
8 principles, folks. 8 principles of business longevity from immigrant entrepreneurs. The book title is Pioneers. Neri Karra Sillaman. Pick this up. It's an incredible read. It's an absolutely wonderful read. Neri, you've got a new website, so why don't we get that on record here? Where can people find out about you?
www.nerikarrasillaman.com. My name.
Your name. It's pretty simple.
Yes.
It's kind of like mine. www.
Say one thing. You mentioned Mel Robbins.
Yes.
And I want to add that when I wrote the book, I sent her an email to see if she would be willing to write a testimonial. She wrote back and said, "What a wonderful writer you are." And I think that's even better than her testimonial. It was an amazing email back to me.
I love hearing that. Yeah, she's a sweetheart. Yeah, she truly is. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, you've got some pretty impressive endorsements on this book, I have to say. The best-selling authors, Wall Street Journal, Vice Chancellor and Professor of Strategy and Policy at the University of Cambridge, Kamal Manur. I mean, Adam Grant, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Yes.
You've got some extraordinary endorsements on this. Folks, do yourself a favor. Get a copy of the book, Pioneers. You will find a wealth of information in there. And Mel was not exaggerating when she wrote the testimonial, saying that it's probably the best business read that she's seen in a long time. Now, I'm just, paraphrasing what she said there. But I want to just thank you, Neri, for being such a wonderful guest. I've loved this conversation. I particularly appreciate you highlighting the journey that you and your family underwent, and the promised land that you've actually landed in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I particularly am appreciative of your humility and your observational skills. You've noticed some very interesting things that you've been able to capture.
Thank you, Blaine. I love being on your podcast and having this conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much, and best of luck for the rest of the day and the evening for you. I know that your parents are taking care of your 6-year-old right now, and I'll let you get back to it.
They are. Thank you.
You bet. Folks, you've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. As always, in your life, find a way to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. Nature doesn't work through accumulation. Nature works through distribution. So be a part of nature. You already are. So act like it. Be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. And until next time, thank you for listening. This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.